when I was a child and I would see beings that were coming through in their death valence, that was kind of scary. If loved ones want to come through, they want to do it without this, big wall that they have to break through.
Yeah. When you give yourself the space to look at what can I learn from this about myself on that deeper soul level, ask those deeper questions.
Usually early on when empaths realize something's not right, like I've got a spiritual gift, but I can't figure it out. Like there's something more here.
Yeah.
Like what's all this junk? What's all this clutter? Why can't I find me in here?
Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Roorda. I'm having conversations with psychic friends. Today I have with me Laura Sabados. She's a clairvoyant medium, an animal communicator, board-certified music therapist who works with sound and vibration in her healing work. And she has a teaching practice related to clairvoyance as well. Welcome, Laura. I'm so glad that you're here with me today.
This is wonderful. It's such an opportunity to be with you too today, Jean.
Yay. So glad you're here. So, Laura, I would love to hear about how your intuition has guided you on your spiritual journey and how your higher self kind of communicates with you or gives you those nudges in terms of what direction to head or what choices to make or steps to make and how that works with your intuition.
Yeah. I want to start out just in a quick little backstory that I was wide open as a kid. And I would share things with my family members when I got intuition, any kind of information from animals, little pixies and nixies, whatever it might be, nature beings. And yeah, I was kind of told to shut all that down. And so I would not have said growing up that I had very much intuition at all. I had really kind of just chopped it off right here at the crown chakra. And one of the things that stands out to me that a lot of people I think can relate to is that sometimes in the dream space, right, we're more open, we're more relaxed, we're more receptive. And a little story here, my grandmother was kind of my go-to person. She was the one who validated me, gave me space to be who I was, leaned into what she saw as my gifts and talents. And when a lot of other family members did not. And
she was the only one that kind of gave you permission and validation.
Yeah, she really did. And she was the one that when I ran away from home, I made sure to stop by and say goodbye to her. I didn't make it very far. She said she wanted to go with me and she would like to get some food and she wanted to wait for my grandfather to get home so we could get money for our trip. And of course,
that's great. How old were you then?
I was like probably about 8, 9 years old, something along those lines.
I love that. You're like, get me out of this energy, but Grandma, I'll say hi to her.
I was just going to tell her my goodbyes on the way down.
I love the certainty. You're like, I can handle this without these people. That's
right. So fast forward like a year, maybe 2 years, and my grandmother had had some strokes and she was in the hospital and we weren't really able to visit her. She was in the intensive care unit and she had a family member with her around the clock. So there was always someone there. So no need to worry. Her name is Babci. We were Polish and grandma in Polish is Babci. And that was who she was to me, was Babci. And what ended up happening is during that time frame, there was a week where every night I woke up at like 2:11 and I had just watched her cross over. I had an aunt, her daughter, that I was very close to, who passed away when I was 4 years old. She died of cancer. And I saw her come into the hospital room. I saw Babci smile and go off with Brenda. And I was like, oh, this is just wonderful. And I watched this play out. And I woke up and looked at my clock every day for a week. Wow. And then on that the final day, I slept all the way till in the morning. And my mom was like, Laura, come here, sit at the table here with me. And she was very sad. And I said, oh, Mom, it's okay. I already know Babci died, but it's okay. Brenda took her away and she's happy.
Yeah.
So that she prepared me. she prepared me. And, I didn't share anything that week. I just was like, well, isn't that weird that this is happening for me? But on that last day when I didn't wake up and my mom was sad, I just knew like that's what had happened. And Bob's got me ready for it. Like
Yeah.
she knew I needed that.
He was
And,
preparing you.
yeah. Came
Yeah.
through sleep. So sleep is one of the ways, dream space is
Yeah.
one of the ways that intuition can come through. And sometimes it's a little unboxing that has to go on
Right.
for people, right? They get
Yeah,
some
and sometimes
symbolism.
people might not pay attention to it, but they're more receptive, like you said, in that dream
Mhm.
space. There's less of that mental clutter going on, or there's more of a quiet receptivity as
Hmm.
the soul.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the dream space is preferred for some people at first because they're not resistant.
Right.
So when I was a child and I would see beings that were coming through in their death valence, that was kind of scary.
Yeah.
Right. And so you kind of want to shut that down. You build
Yeah.
up this wall of resistance. And,
Right.
if spirit, if your guides, if loved ones want to come through, they want to do it without this, big wall that they have to break through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you don't have any validation in that waking space for the information you're seeing and hearing, and there's no permission to like talk with anyone about it, then it's safer in that dream space because you can say, "Oh, I had a dream," And people are like, "Oh, it's just a dream."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think that's one of the things that makes it exciting to be alive right now because we are opening up. The world is opening up to talk about these things. People are talking more about spiritual gifts, intuition, the beyond, extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
When I was a
It's
kid,
almost becoming normal. It's like all of that non-permission and invalidation and, oh, that's not a thing, all of that has shifted since certainly when we were children. And so now we can just talk openly about it.
yeah, for the most part. And I just think that is so exciting.
It is. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Well,
As
and
you
that's why
know.
we're able to do these things, right? And get this
Exactly.
out for folks. Yeah.
Yeah, normalized. And I'm excited for the children coming up in this environment to just have a lot less of that non-permission and invalidation and a lot more receptivity. And, there's certainly many more parents now even welcoming that. Oh, what did you see when you encountered your uncle?
What
What
did
kind
they
of
have to
energy
say?
were you
Anything
aware of
about
around
me?
that person? There's not only more receptivity, but actually a lot of welcoming of the information that children have because they're so much more connected to spirit still and hopefully haven't encountered as much invalidation as some of us adults who've been around a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So dreams are, a great way for people to access their intuitive information and receive that guidance for their soul. What other ways have you worked with and encountered in your life? I know you mentioned the numbers too, like when a lot of people get those signs from spirit with, seeing the clock at a certain time, like you said, or seeing a license plate with a.
I think I told you one time. I think I shared this with you. It is such a funny story. I had just done a session here with somebody, a private session,
Yeah.
and I was rushing to try and get somewhere. I don't remember what it was. And I am stopped at this stoplight. And as I pull out and make the turn, I remember I was like worried. I was concerned about something that was going on. And then I look up and the back of this big tractor trailer says super ego on it. And I just
Yeah.
burst out laughing.
I have seen those trucks. I don't think I've seen them out west. They must be on the East Coast because I lived on the East Coast for a couple of years recently. And yes, I had a similar thing where my mind was wandering into all kinds of, stories and spirit just got my attention. I looked up and there was a big truck. There you go.
Hello, get out of your head.
Those are great.
Yeah.
I want to call that company up and thank them, actually.
If they only knew the joy that they were bringing to us.
I know. It's
The
just so
awareness.
great. Yeah, so those
Yeah.
kinds of signs and little nudges from spirit can be
Yeah.
Very fun and amusing.
A lot of times when I do, like I remember being one time at a stoplight and the car in front of me had like a 555 on the license plate, and the
Yeah.
car next to them had like a 333 on the license plate, and the one over here had something else. And I was like, what was I just thinking about? That's like perfectly in, like, I'm looking at all these numbers. Like,
Yeah.
what is that about? I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, so I do actually now when I see those numbers, it's a sign. So what was going on? That's like, oh, that's a winner. Like ding, ding, ding. That's a winner.
Yeah. It's like a pay attention, be present with whatever is happening internally, where your thoughts were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're little clues, little breadcrumbs.
Yeah. A little hello.
Yeah.
How
Hello.
about in your own spiritual journey? What kinds of big aha moments did you have where you recognize, oh, that's my intuition guiding me? That's my higher self informing me of my next step or what direction to take.
Yeah. So there was a big, huge one, and I am just so appreciative for it. Again, this was before I had allowed and given permission for those spiritual gifts to kind of open back up again, and for me to even see the value in them. Right? I didn't see the value in them for a long time. And it was just me leaving work, being the music therapist that I am. I had a job in recreation therapy out at this state psychiatric hospital in Washington State. And here I am leaving, and I needed to go get my kids. I have twins, a boy and a girl, and they were at the daycare. And, there's double fees when you have twins if you're late to pick them up. And anybody who's had kids in childcare knows that the fees go by the minute. It's not what you want to have happen.
You're like, I can't be late.
So I'm rushing. I'm thinking I got to get in there. And, and I was literally, it's 5 minutes kind of northerly to go get the kids. And then it was like 10 minutes home. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go do this. Well, I went to open my car door and I heard, oh no, you need to go get that thing inside. Now, I don't even remember. This is so long ago. My kids are 33. I don't remember what it was that I needed to go inside to get. And I'm like, I don't need that. So I'm arguing with this voice in my head. I'm like, I don't need that. Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't need that. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to keep touching the car. I'm going to go inside. So I go inside and somebody stops and talks to me, and we're just having this little chit chat, and I get distracted. So I did not go get the thing.
Yeah.
I go back out. I go back out to the car, and I'm like, oh, I don't have that thing. And that little voice says, oh, it's okay. And I'm like, what? I needed it a minute ago. Now I don't need it. Nope. Go get your kids.
I love the internal argument with the voice. It's hilarious. Yeah.
Again, I wasn't open. So what am I going to do when I'm hearing something that's, a little on the foreign side, like dictating things to me? Of course I'm going to argue with it. That's kind of who I am.
Yeah.
So I listen to this voice yet again, and I get in my car and I go pick up my kiddos, and we're driving on home just like any other day after a weird kind of like, what was that voice in my head kind of thing. Yeah. And I get halfway home. Again, minutes have passed, right? Minutes. And there was all this steam. I could hear the ambulances and the fire trucks and the whatever behind me. There was like a 5-car pileup in the intersection. And I knew at that moment, like, this was divine intervention, right? And I called that angel whispers at the time. Like, I had a guardian angel whisper, or more like hit me with a 2x4, like, stop, to make sure that I listened, right? And to negotiate the fact that we were not in that intersection, because it wasn't our time. We have other things we're supposed to be doing. So
absolutely,
those things happen. And once again, I'm so glad that we're living in the here and now, because there is more room and permission to talk about those things, because I kept that quiet for a long time.
Yeah, it's easy for people to invalidate and say, oh, it's just a coincidence, and it's easy for people to not recognize the importance of listening to that voice. Like you were saying, you were arguing with it, and maybe would have continued to argue with it as you drove down the road. But just to recognize, oh wow, like that that wasn't a coincidence. I was being guided to avoid that life-threatening situation. Sometimes I think about that just in general, driving and going somewhere and I get delayed by whatever it is. And, the ego part of you might get frustrated, like, oh, this is making me late, or this is making me, there's a detour. Oh, I got to go do that. But it's possible that's causing you to just be in a safer situation or be aligned with some other path, meet a different person that you wouldn't have met if you had to be in a rush, So there's all those moments of just surrendering to what is and trusting that that's in your highest good and you're on your path.
Yeah, I've had several of those scenarios that you just described play out where I'm all in my ego, like, oh, they're always on time. I need to be there, and I'm 10 minutes late, or I'm however minutes late, and should I call them? And I'm just having this, who knows what's going on up in my head, more argument, I guess.
Right.
I get there and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. And, and I'm like, oh, wow, I went through all that for what? It's
an East Coast thing. I feel like there's more of those pictures about like being on time, it's like a performance or living up to some standard of perfection or proving that you've got your shit together. So you've got to show up on time. But sometimes, even if you're just a few minutes late, that's what needed to happen. And everybody's arriving. And it's funny the little ways that we beat ourselves up.
And we fight it. Like we struggle against it and we fight it. Yeah. We make life so much harder on ourselves than it really needs to. And like when you were talking about those little delays and, just things that come up to kind of interfere, I guess, a little bit and bring us into a more full awareness. I was thinking, I've heard so many different things, little nudges come up. How many didn't I follow? How many did I argue with till I walked away from something that would have been a great opportunity for me? Like, how many times has that happened?
How many times do we ignore that voice or, that's, argue with it or invalidate it or we're afraid.
Not logical.
Yeah. Sometimes those nudges don't make sense. And we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Or we're afraid, the fear comes up. If those nudges are pushing us in a direction that's outside of our comfort zone, or if those nudges are guiding us towards just speaking to a person and we're like, why would I just go up and talk to that person? They're going to think I'm crazy or whatever.
Yeah.
That fear or insecurity might come up. But then when we do follow it, there's always that recognition, that hindsight 2020, right? Where it's like, oh, that's why I needed to talk to that person or go over there or follow that nudge.
Yeah.
But then how many do we miss? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always another one though. Spirit's very persistent, right?
Well, I hope so. If we miss
the first one, there's more.
I hope so. When my intuition was opening up more, I literally would say, okay, if I need to have the 2x4, I'll take the 2x4. And then I realized, don't ask for the 2x4 because that might not be too.
Like, what am I asking for here? That's hilarious. But that comes sometimes, even when we're not asking for it. If we have been ignoring those nudges and then the nudges get a little stronger and they're pushes, and then if we're still ignoring them and we really need to take a step, then it is that proverbial 2x4.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that before. We were chatting, Jean, about how sometimes when we're bringing in the information, but we are not processing it, it will be stored in that physical body and it will manifest as an illness or a disease condition. It's like the 2x4 of saying, hey, pay attention to me. This is an alarm bell. And when we can become aware of that and kind of sit with it and look for what are the cues and clues and, where's this pointing to, oftentimes we can unravel it and have these beautiful, beautiful healings.
Yeah, I love that in terms of just validating the importance of looking at physical body healing from that perspective of what is the information here? What is the guidance or the energy that was stuck that I wasn't willing to look at before? So to look at any kind of illness or injury in the body, something that's not in wellness in the body, if you look at it also from the perspective of what is the information here that I've been missing, that I've been ignoring, what is the energy that I've been pushing away and not integrating or letting go of. Yeah, it's such an important part of healing to include that in the physical healing as well, because that's where we can't ignore it anymore. If Spirit's been giving us those gentle nudges and it gets more like pushes or 2x4s, we can't ignore it when it shows up as pain in the body, or an injury that doesn't heal, or an illness that doesn't go away, or can't ignore that. So
And
that's one way Spirit gets our attention for sure.
yeah. It's really easy too. We've talked about resistance again a couple of different times in receiving intuition, and also in just how we respond to different situations or scenarios, right? We put up those walls, that resistance. The same thing happens when something does manifest in the physical body, right?
Yeah.
We push.
Right.
We push really hard to make that stop. To turn it around, to reverse it,
away.
to do whatever. Go away. When there could be something very beautiful there for us, real healing, right? For us to feel more whole and well again on the other side of kind of sitting with that for a minute or two.
Absolutely. I think it's a very different approach to welcome any illness or disease in the body as information that you can receive, rather than, because that's our default setting, our kind of habitual response is like, oh, I got to fix this. I got to get rid of it. I got to make this better. I don't want to feel this. I don't. And of course, we want to be well. We want to feel whole in our body. We want to not have physical ailments slowing us down or making us uncomfortable. But if we can remember, oh, there's information here. There's an opportunity for healing. There's an opportunity for growth. There's an opportunity to have this be much more than just make that pain go away. Yeah.
I don't want this. Make it stop.
Yeah. We shift from I don't want this, make this stop, to I wonder what this is all about. What can I learn? What can I discover about myself, about my perhaps trapped emotions or unresolved, mental clutter. I love this topic. I love also looking at when there's a repeated, some people have what we call chronic symptoms or chronic illnesses, or sometimes now it's considered autoimmune diseases, things that on a physical level we call more chronic or ongoing, right? And there's so much deep information there, and really deep opportunity for transformation of like lifetimes long soul traumas, right? That's how I look at chronic disease. This isn't just like something that's on the surface of your soul's experience that you're like, oh, I'm just going to let go of that childhood trauma. Sometimes this is like lifetimes old. I'm letting go of like lifetimes of grief, or I have an opportunity for that, right? Maybe this chronic condition is actually a lot of stored energy that's way beyond even just this lifetime. And that's why it has so much power and energy to manifest in such an ongoing and difficult or frustrating way in the body. But when we look at it and approach it from that deeper level of the soul, there's so much space for transformation and miracles.
Yes. And, I love that you brought that up and it unfolded that way, because I know that there are situations that were very painful, especially emotionally for me, but there was still some physical elements and components as well.
Yeah.
And now that I have opened up all this area of learning and of, communication with spirit, and, being able to look at past lives and things like that. The situation, like with my ex-husband, that was just awful, and I would not wish it on anybody. Not that. But I see where it healed multiple lifetimes with that soul. It was a karmic thing. And once I got in there, and I guess forgiveness is a good way. Well, forgiveness, awareness. Looking at what is the message here, and follow the yellow brick road. Like just asking, what's the message here? And then one little clue will pop up, and then you go there. And then the next one comes up and you go there. And then the next one. And it will lead you into some beautiful places of immense healing sometimes. And when I was able to unpack that and realize the depth and breadth of that healing, I'm like, well, it sucked, but I'm glad that's done. It's over. It's
But you
healed.
receive the deeper healing available. It's so similar to when something shows up in the body. Well, what if it's something that shows up in our life that we could easily go into more victim space about it, right? Oh, he's just this awful guy and poor me, that was horrible. Or this is horrible. But when you give yourself the space to look at, what can I learn from this about myself on that deeper soul level? Ask those deeper questions. When have I encountered this soul before? What was going down then? What was our relationship in past lives? What's unresolved? And look at it from that higher level of why am I creating this again? And what am I here to learn about it and about myself? And then, what am I here to forgive and let go of? Because that's really what karma is. It's whatever's left unforgiven. When we don't forgive, we just repeat that scenario.
That is so
Until
true.
we're like, I would really like to not have this keep happening, right?
It reminds me of, I have a couple of Facebook friends who've recently been posting an awful lot about narcissistic and toxic relationships.
Yeah.
And not having one, but two or, three.
Yeah.
And
Serial relationships in narcissism.
yeah. And it's not because the whole world is out to get you.
Right.
Right. This is one of those times to lean into that pain. Like, it hurts, but lean into it and say, like, what is the message here for me that I keep coming up with, Tom, Dick, and Harry, and they suck.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
what can I learn about
what's going on, right?
Rather than just feel like, wow, everybody's horrible. You go into those nihilistic stories of I'll never find a good person, and why is it just always one bad person after the other? Or what's wrong with me that I keep attracting these, narcissistic individuals. But when you look at it from, what can I learn from this about myself, and maybe past patterns that you're ready to resolve or create a new pattern, create a new way of connecting with yourself and others. And when you transform that from the inside, it shows up as a different pattern on the outside.
Your whole life will shift because you've changed your vibration. You're no longer focusing and being in resistance and keeping that stuck in your life, right? You're not causing that part of attraction.
It is so often just about letting go of resistance, isn't it?
It is. It really, really is.
And it's not like we're telling people if they're in a pattern of narcissistic relationships, just let go of resistance, meaning just let yourself have those horrible experiences. No, let go of resisting what within you is in that space of victim or blame, feeling like there's something wrong with you that you keep attracting that, and really looking at what's underneath the surface of that resistance. And then the vibration changes. Yeah. Something new can be created. It opens up a new space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it does.
It's great. It might be easy to speak to that, having lived through that and experienced those changes. So I just want to say to anyone who feels stuck in those kind of patterns that it is possible, right? You and I have both lived through situations like that where we've seen a pattern shift through the power of just surrender, deep inward understanding of ourselves and forgiveness, and just opening up awareness to what are those deeper soul patterns that we're unraveling, and what's the vibration that we're not willing to move or open up or let go of. And then when we do, huge transformation, huge shift in the external world when we change the internal landscape.
Yeah, I would call it like that magic space or that miracle space, because I know that there are things in my life personally that I thought would never, ever change or shift. And like, they haven't been a part of my life for a decade because I was able to heal that, and if you look back at it from the point of where I was in the pain looking out, I would call it a miracle if it could ever go away. Right.
Right. It's like when you're in it, it's so hard to believe that it could ever be anything different. And that word miracle seems like so far out of reach, and like, well, it's a miracle because it just doesn't ever happen.
This
I
is so
think what that word
impossible.
means to a lot of people is miracle just means like so far-fetched, right? Just 1 in a million, and what are the chances of that? And it's not going to happen to me. But we really do have the power to live in that miracle space and transform from the inside out. And then when you're on the other side of it, you're like, wow, that thing that just seemed impossible to ever change, that was just so ingrained in my psyche or in my physiology even, when it's a pattern that we've lived in our whole lives, we're so identified with it that it lives in our body even as part of our physiology and part of our psyche. And then when it does shift through that internal healing work and awareness, then we know like, oh, this is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I love so much about creating those shifts is how when we go back to revisit something that was painful in the past, we can experience it with more neutrality and more freedom because we're not in resistance to it anymore. It's not there. It's not present. It's not creating that pain, whether it's emotional or physical. It's not manifesting that way anymore. And so we can look at it and we can experience it, revisit it, and it just feels totally different. And there is such a freedom in that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so freeing to be able to experience it. Maybe again, hindsight is 2020. Experience it from the other side and look back and go, oh. And then we see even deeper into maybe the purpose, right? Some of the deeper information that we weren't seeing when we were in the midst of it and still fighting it. But once we get through all that resistance and let go and open up and heal, then we get even more ahas about it. More ahas about some of the karmic pieces or the purpose for growth, for what our soul was really needing to experience in order to grow. We glean that wisdom, right?
That's right. And then we start to see like all the areas that were impacted by that situation, right? And we see healing in all of those areas.
Right. The ripple effect.
The
Yeah.
ripple, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it expands out into other areas of our life. It's so true because when we heal, for example, with talking about a physical illness or even if it was more of a relationship dynamic that was not in wellness, when we heal that one aspect of our lives, it's not in isolation. So it shifts our whole dynamic in the rest of our lives too, with all of our relationships and our workspace and our capacity for joy and how much more creativity we can express and how much more enjoyment we can have in life.
It completely changes how we show up in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day, every moment of every day. Yeah.
I'm so glad we're all showing up a little bit more and more every day.
Yes.
Because too, imagine how much the whole world would change and is changing by each and every one of us showing up more and more and having the capacity to show up more and more. Because we don't have so much of our energy in all of those pockets of resistance. We're just able to be here and present and living our lives in present time. That's why the work that you and I and so many others do is so important. It's so important. It's not just about, oh, I don't want these people to feel sick anymore, or I don't want these people to be struggling anymore, or I want to help people get out of certain levels of pain or difficulty, but it's like, it's changing the world. And I don't go about it from that, like, I want to change the world, but wow, it's a great benefit,
Yeah.
It's a great side effect,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
How about some side effects that are transformative of the world around you rather than, pain and suffering?
Yeah. And a lot of folks that come to me initially, they see it as, please help stop this pain. I need clues. I need the key to unlock, whatever this is going on in my life. And one of the things I try to do is help them see that bigger picture, right? That when we can transform the pain in our lives into healing, into wholeness, into wellness, that we become something different and our vibration changes that then bumps into other people's vibrations and they change. And then it just keeps rippling out and out and out. So we're changing the world.
Yeah.
Each and every one of us is changing the world.
Every one of us.
Every day.
Yeah,
every day.
just with our presence and awareness. Yeah, but oftentimes, again, like when people come to you or when they get that deep aha in their life, like, I need help with this or I need an answer for this, it's like the gateway drug is that pain or that conflict or that difficulty in life that they've hit a wall and just said, enough. I need to find an answer or a solution or something to heal this because I will no longer put up with this. But it opens up such a big door for healing, way beyond just, I want this symptom to go away, or I want this difficult relationship to shift, or, I want to know how to proceed in my career, or I want to feel better in my body. I call that the gateway drug. The entry point, right? It's the entry point for for what could be, if that person chooses, a much deeper journey of soul healing and transformation.
Yep, we're all in the driver's seat of our own healing. And if we're closing ourselves off, if we're not saying, hey, it's okay for you to program the GPS for just a quick second and get me out of this stuck spot I'm in, and then I'll take over. Like,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. I love that way of putting it. It's like when you're, working with a client or they're in a big growth period and reaching out for help, it's like, can you just take over the GPS for a moment? But ultimately, I feel like, well, I'm just pointing the way. Like, well, you could take a turn up here and go that way, and that would, that would help resolve this, the stuckness you're in. But it could be, here, let me just put in the GPS. And when you're ready, you can take over.
Yeah. I was working with somebody this week, and they had shared with me when setting up the appointment how rough things have been, how cyclical things have been, how stuck they are, and just lots and lots of misery and trying lots of things, but never being able to go beyond more than a month of improvement, which that's, when you're 38 years old, that's a lot of months of, not going very far.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. And we were in the session, and it was his first session, and he really hadn't had a whole lot of information about clairvoyance. He was going a lot with trust here. And there was a point, though, where he kind of leaned back. We were getting ready to go in a little bit deeper, and he leaned back and his hands went across his chest.
Oh.
And I thought,
That's interesting body language.
I wonder if this is part of why you're stuck. But he realized, I think he realized what he was doing, and he opened up his body language again. And he kicked his shoes off, and he really allowed some beautiful transformation to happen that day. That was great. Again, even when we're seeking some assistance, right, we have to be open to receiving that and not be in resistance to it. So
surrender. It's all one big dance of surrender. Letting go. But it's so interesting when resistance shows up in the body language, right? Because it can be an indicator for ourselves too when we're in a place of more shutting down or fear. That's, of course, resistance is always coming from fear. And that might show up as literally just like, blocking in front of them.
Yeah. I know for me, I will kind of set joints a little bit. Like my muscles will kind of
tighten up.
Yeah, tighten up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm the Tin Man all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah. Talk about messages from spirit. It shows up as tension in the body, as holding, or sometimes it's just like not breathing deeply. I think so much of the world lives in a chronic state of shallow breath instead of deep breathing, right? Just super shallow breathing. Really not letting ourselves be in the moment. And that shallow breathing has a lot to do with fear and resistance.
That fight or flight.
Yeah. We don't always notice it or just the constant fight or flight is so taxing on the body, but so many people, we end up living in that, get me out of here.
And for some people, it's the norm, and they just don't even realize that that's what's going on.
Yeah. It's just, this is how it's always been. If you've been in fight or flight all of your life or a majority of your life, you wouldn't even notice that there is another way. So you take a deep breath and go, oh, It would be nice to not feel this much stress or constant tension or constant worry or constant fear. It's a great journey of awareness just to notice what information our body gives us in each moment. Yeah. The simplicity and the importance of breath. I love how you shared with me how you work with people too, and just noticing all the different ways that you can receive information about where someone is. I'm sure you were looking clairvoyantly as he's communicating to you too, but you can also notice in the body language. Tell me a little more about, how you work with people and what different modalities you incorporate and what kinds of people show up to work with you in terms of what's going on in their life that they're ready to transform or look at.
I have found that I attract people who are experiencing a lot of what my journey has already been. And that is really being what folks are referring to these days as an empath, which is really that clairsentience, of the 7 major chakras on the body. The clairsentience is a second chakra or a sacral chakra function. And it's all about feeling. It's all about emotion. And as a music therapist working in psychiatric hospitals where emotions are just everywhere and there's crises day in and day out, I was going around I was lightening the load of these energies for other people, unwittingly carrying them around and not being able to solve them, right? You can't heal someone
solve
else's
other people's emotions.
Mm-mm.
Can't really solve emotions in general, but you can just have them and let them go. But you certainly can't do that for other people. Yeah.
Right. You can't.
And your attention, because you were working in a very extreme container of heavily charged emotion there.
Yeah. Just a little.
To put it lightly. Right. So that really, I would imagine that really got your attention, talking about like nudges from spirit. Did that show up as any physical ailment in the body or just like heaviness, or how did that show up for you?
So I have had chronic low back pain, which guess where the second chakra is, right? The back side of that second chakra is your low back. It's that sacral area.
Yeah.
And that has been the bane of my existence since I've been 14 years old, actually.
Wow.
It's been a long time working with that. And a lot of folks that do come to work with me, I discover very early on that they're carrying around so many other people's emotions and energies in an effort to heal them, which is a beautiful kind of thing.
Yeah.
But not when it's making you sick, right?
Right.
And so helping them learn what to do with those energies, like how do we ground? How do we effectively move those energies? How do we find out which ones are ours?
Yeah. How does an empath even recognize that they are holding on to everybody else's emotions? So beginning to recognize what's theirs, what's not theirs, recognize that they are feeling everything.
So usually early on when empaths realize something's not right, like I've got a spiritual gift, but I can't figure it out. Like there's something more here.
Yeah.
Like what's all this junk? What's all this clutter? Why can't I find me in here?
Right.
So even simple questions like, what's your favorite movie will be like, you'll come up with 17 answers. What's your favorite color? Well, it depends on the situation. It's because you're reading all that energy, the other people's energy in your space. And so it's really hard to find your true answer because there's so many other answers that pop up in that space.
I love that example. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it before, that for empaths, those kinds of just simple questions can be difficult because it's like, well, anything. Yeah. An empath might not have ever truly discovered their own energy on that second chakra level because they're constantly feeling all of the energy around them.
This is going to sound pretty wild, but I think I was in my 40s before I could answer like a favorite food question or a favorite anything question, because I had lived decades upon decades with all of my clair abilities shut down on purpose. And then when things started to unfold, it took me a little while to find, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that's what happened in my case. And that's what's happened when a lot of people have found me. And it's amazing how easy it was once I learned some grounding techniques and releasing other people's energies. It was like, oh, I can finally say, this is what I'm in the mood for dinner
Yeah.
today, or,
I
make a
know what I want.
decision.
Yeah.
And I remember early on, one of the things when I was learning these tools, I had gotten a call from a person that I used to work with and a program that I had built. And it was really a magnificent program. And I left because people above me were not listening to what was going on. And I was watching it kind of spiral downhill. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to watch this crash and burn. And so I left the agency, and this person called me back like 4 months later, and she had just lost her job. She was telling me how horrible the crash and burn was and all the things. And so for 45 minutes on the phone, she's, pouring out all this stuff. And I literally went to dinner after that with my man, Dan, and was sitting there and going, and I was starting to kind of rehash over it. I'm like, this is not my energy. And I just let it go.
Yeah.
And I had an evening with my man that did not involve that place that I chose to leave 4 months before. And
So
that's liberating. So totally liberating. So that's a lot of the work I do is help empaths like manage that second chakra and start to develop these other gifts because they're there waiting. And as long as we're cluttered up on that second chakra and feeling into everything, we're not going to be able to see or to hear or to know. Yeah.
Exactly. It's such a confusing place to live, is what I recognized from my sort of before and after, right? Because I certainly was and have been and always am an empath. But before I learned how to recognize that and work with that second chakra in a clearer way and develop the clairvoyant abilities and just really learn to navigate from the sixth and seventh chakra rather than only that feeling space. The before of that for me was just confusion. Like life was really confusing, definitely difficult and painful because of all of the emotions that I was feeling and not having the discernment about whose they were. And then also recognizing finally through getting through the confusion, oh, I don't have to be responsible for all these emotions either. That's a huge one, especially for healers, because there's empaths and then usually they go hand in hand, but it's kind of a double whammy when you're an empath and you're also a healer in the sense that you just deeply care about others. So not only do you feel everyone's emotions, but you care about them. You don't want them to feel sad or angry or, whatever the emotion is that might not be pleasant. So then you go into responsibility for it. And that's just not very fun. I mean, it's just extremely difficult, right? Because life becomes this confusing burden of taking care of everyone and trying to make them happy or trying to get them to feel better. And really it's a survival attempt so that you can feel better because you're feeling it all, right? So it's not all selfless, right?
Well, I mean, for me, quite honestly, Jean, for me, it was survival because my mother would go into these rages. And so
you got to prevent that. Yeah.
If I could lessen that and lighten that load, which is why I was trying to run away by age 8 or 9, it's because I couldn't handle. Yeah. And you talk about the responsibility for that. Like, I think that's why a lot of times when people finally become aware of this and like that there is a way to change and create a shift in the way that they're managing energy in the space, they're like, a weight has lifted.
A huge weight. Yeah.
A huge weight because you've got all that other stuff that's weighing you down. But then, like you said, responsibility.
Yeah. Layers of confusion leave when you recognize what's happening with the second chakra and the empath abilities. And then another huge layer that's extremely heavy leaves when you let go of the responsibility for all of that. And then another huge layer of shift when you start to recognize how much of your creative energy was going into all that managing and how much more you can create and accomplish when you're not being responsible for all that. When you can actually just address what you're here to address and create, what your soul came in to create, and how much your creative power can manifest when you're not stuck in the responsibility and managing of everyone else's pain and problems.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to that GPS thing. That's you
Yes.
taking over your GPS again and
Yeah.
saying, what? I can go anywhere I want. I can do anything I want.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't have to let my GPS get hijacked by everyone else.
yes, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, it's so freeing.
that's a huge thing to feel like you're driving your own car.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I just love the GPS analogy too, because it's then when you recognize how much creative power you have that's just all been siphoned away into this managing everyone's problems and pain, not only can you set the GPS for where you'd like to go, really see, but oh, now you actually see where you'd like to go.
You can see, you can run your energy and like not have to stop for fuel.
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
You can see where you want to go, and you can see, oh, this is where that next step is on the GPS, right? This is my next step. All those steps become clear, and you have the energy to take those steps. Like you said, you can run your energy so you don't have to stop for fuel. I love this analogy. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And a lot of empaths will ask me when they find out what I do, because one of the favorite things I love to do
Mhm.
is it's just fun. It's like a new sandbox every month. I love to go do these festivals and fairs, right?
Yeah.
Holistic fairs and, psychic festivals and things like that. And like,
Yeah.
I'm just saying hello to people, hello
Yeah.
to the divine soul that you are, one after another, after another. People are like, oh, you must be so exhausted after handling so many people's energy. I'm like, I'm not handling any of that. I'm running my energy like I
Yeah,
feel
that's how you don't
fantastic.
become exhausted. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, because you've really mastered that, not taking it on as your responsibility. So, because that's what happens, I've noticed in the interim. You start to develop the clairvoyance, and then for a while, you become even more aware, right, of all of the different problems and traumas and unresolved karmic stuff that everyone's walking around with. So, if you haven't let go of that responsibility, you get even more buried, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important to let go. Like, it is not my job to solve everyone's karma, right? It's just,
You can't. Let's start there.
right? And if you are feeling like a completely overwhelmed and buried healer or an unhealed healer, that's something to look at. It probably has a lot to do with that responsibility.
It is,
Yeah.
and who in their right mind would say, okay, I've got, not like Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, like I literally have a job that you can never do the job, but I want you to sign up for it. Who's going to volunteer for
Right?
that?
Some of us have tried.
But we cannot heal someone else's karma. Yeah, no. So it is
Yeah.
totally, Jean, one of the things I think that really clicked for me, and I don't even remember when or how this kind of transpired, but it was just somewhere along the journey learning the tools, was that when I quote unquote take responsibility for something else,
Mhm.
I take it away from the person who has it.
Yeah.
Like when I take it, then they can't do anything with it. And like, who am I to take away from another divine soul's
Yeah.
creative power and
And path of learning. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like you actually put a roadblock in their own forward growth if you're trying to solve it for them.
yeah.
It's a
Or
great aha.
or going
Absolutely.
to that travel metaphor, I just gave you a flat tire,
Right.
right?
I took the tire right off. Let me take this tire for you. It doesn't seem to be working well, so I'll just remove it.
Yeah. I'll be responsible for this tire, and then you can
Yeah.
just figure out why you're stuck.
Yeah, but we can't do that. All we can do is resolve our own karmic patterns and shine a light on, because we can shine a light on where those karmic patterns are in somebody else. That's really what essentially clairvoyance is shining a light on energy. And when you shine that light, say, oh, look, in case you wanted to know, you've got a flat tire.
And then they go, oh, no problem. I can fix it right away.
Right.
And
Because you're
that's the,
validating the creativity of that soul. That soul has the creative power to shift that. They know how to put the air in the tire or get a new tire or whatever it is.
yep.
Yeah, I love that way of looking at it. It's so helpful and it's so freeing. But again, like with the journey of recognizing as an empath that we're taking on energy, we also recognize as a clairvoyant what we're becoming responsible for or resisting in terms of what karmic patterns we're seeing. And it always comes back to that matching picture, what we're resisting within ourselves, right? If we go into responsibility or fix it in relationship to anything we see, it's like, oh, it's a good reminder. This is something that I'm resisting within myself. I'd rather look at it in you and fix it. try to fix it out there instead of looking at it within. So it's always an opportunity for heal or heal thyself.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Nobody else is coming to do it for us either. Right.
Yeah. Because they can't. Yeah.
No, and that's the beauty of it is we're here to grow and develop as the soul that we are. And if we can just own all of it for ourselves and go about that business, it's very freeing. It's easier. And the people around us notice the shift too.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I notice that a lot where people can't necessarily put it into words, but they're more drawn to you or they're interested in who you are and what you do, or they just say, often people will say to me, it feels good to stand next to you. If I'm in a crowd, like if I'm in a room with a lot of people for an event or something, people will just come. And I've literally had a whole bunch of people stand next to me and several of them say, it feels really good to stand next to you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're welcome.
And
That's the energy that they're noticing if they can't put words to it.
And I was going to say, that's the other sign of you might be an empath or a healer.
Yeah.
You go away from people because they don't feel good, or you go towards people because they do feel good. Because when you're
all those people that wanted to stand next to me.
Yeah, because you were flowing energy, you were running energy, and you weren't putting any pictures out there for them. You weren't flooding emotions out towards them. You're clear. You're a clear container. So who wouldn't want to be near somebody who's clear? Because an empath will pick it up like a hidden agenda. Right? When they stand next to someone who might be whatever, got a thought process going on or a feeling going on, or they just left an argument or something, they're going to pick that up as oh, they're trying to be one of those energy vampires and take my good energy. Give me their bad energy and take my good energy, right? That's a sign.
Sometimes people's energy literally sucks, right? That energy vampires, it sucks. It literally doesn't feel good. When someone has just an energy that's clear in terms of, there's not a lot of judgment pictures being put out there, or, I don't have all of those problems in my space for an empath to feel responsible for.
And I think too, when we're really clear and our energy field is clean and being refreshed all the time, I really feel like it gives other people more permission to be able to find that for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's really important too.
It creates a contrast too. It gives them not only more permission to create that for themselves, but to notice when it's not clear, right? Because there's that contrast, this, if they're operating on that empathic level, this feels really nice. It's clear. It's not cluttered. It's not full of energy. And then, there's a little bit more clutteredness going on over here. It's that contrast to bring awareness. And then it's also the permission. And it's like an invitation, hey.
Yeah. Did you know this was possible?
Right.
Right. That's one of the things I like about technology is it can really help. They like my phone can be a little pocket assistant, if you will. And it's I'm always learning things that my phone can do that I didn't know it could do, right? Yeah. And someone says, hey, did you know this is possible? I'm like, well, Shazam. And
that's amazing. Yeah. Exactly.
So sometimes when that empath comes up next to one of us who's kind of mastered that and is using their different clear abilities and keeping that energy field really clear, they're like, well, Shazam.
Yeah, that's
now
possible.
I know that's possible.
what else I can do. Absolutely. Yeah. Just that demonstration of what's possible and that invitation. You too can clear that clutter and not carry around so much of a heavy weight all the time.
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being out there in the world, shining your light and offering that invitation and showing people their inner GPS and what's possible there. With where people can go and what kinds of deep transformations are very possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see it too as you're showing people where there's limits in their life that don't have to be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pointing out the unlimited nature of their beingness and what's possible for them.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me, Laura.
I really appreciate it too, Jean.
Yeah, so good to talk with you and learn more about your story, your upbringing. I didn't know how much you encountered as a child and wanted to run away from.
Yeah, it was not a pretty sight.
Well, I love like the enthusiasm and freedom that you were operating from as an 8-year-old. Like, I'll just go do something else.
Run away.
That's great. Some of us just kind of put up with it and load up the second chakra with more energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Till it becomes too much.
Yeah.
Well, what a blessing and a joy to spend this time with you. And thank you, everyone, for being with us here on The Higher Vibe. We'll see you next time. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.